Hello, Wake Up New Zealand, Carol Sakey speaking. Migration. Migration's increasing, and now immigrants can bring in family members, and it's been increasing for quite a while, though in 2017, Winston Peters said they wanted to cut immigration down by 80%. Ardern said we were going to cut it down by 40%. But they lied. And so I'm looking today at what the mainstream news are not going to actually print a full-page article about what is a woman. How freaking disgusting is that? That's a war on free speech, but it's not just now that it's happened. When I made this objection to the UN Global Compact in 2018, one of those things that I objected to was a violation of freedom of speech. So in that compact under Objective 17, this threatens to prevent open public discussion about immigration in New Zealand. So you can't have open discussion about immigration in New Zealand and how it affects your country. So if you have mass migration, the country's already suffering, say, from mental health, government's mental health failure to deal with people. There are a number of suicides, increasing waiting lists on houses, high inflation, cost of food, and New Zealanders are really suffering. The government's not even significantly been able to actually deal with their own people, yet they're happy enough to bring in legal and illegal immigrants, because that is what the UN Global Compact says under Objective 17, that legal and illegal migrants could come to New Zealand. They also threatened the mainstream media by saying, look, if you don't comply to the messaging that we give, the government gives, to how you report migration, then you will have your public funding taken away. Hence, they had the journalist fund of 55 million to mainstream media, etc. So it's all about zipping your mouth and not talking about things that oppose the government's narratives. So the Select Committee, they didn't hear my objection, the 70-page objection to the UN Global Compact, until after the mosque attacks, yet that ratification went through and was signed in December 2019, and those mosque attacks were on the 15th of March 2019. And they used the objection to the UN Global Compact of migration to further migration, to stop us from talking by calling us Islamophobia or right-wing extremism or white supremacy and all that propaganda stuff to shut us up, because we wanted to talk about our failing health system, failing mental health system. We want to talk about what was happening in New Zealand. How could it possibly benefit migrants if we can't look after our own? As a mum, if I don't look after myself, then I can't look after my children. And the same applies to the government. It's quite simple, really. So our health system, including mental health, was failing, and we had an increased public housing waiting list, and it was growing. So the government was saying, okay, third world nations, countries, we have migrants, whether they're legal or illegal, can enter into New Zealand. So Objective 17, we commit to eliminate all forms of discrimination against all migrants, including illegal ones, to implement legislation that penalises hate crimes that target immigrants. So again, that is a violation of freedom of speech. So they said they were going to report on internet-based information sensitizing and educating the media. So if the media didn't comply, they would have their public funding taken away. So first they give them the public funding, and then they take it away if they don't do as they're told. So the enforcement of propaganda. So at the time, New Zealand signed the UN Global Compact on Migration in Marrakesh. Another declaration was being signed at the same time in Marrakesh, and that was the Global Mayors Migration Declaration by the Global Mayors Migration Council. Mass migration would be introduced into urban cities globally. Peters didn't tell us about that. No one in Parliament told us about that. It was all hush, hush. So they had to zip us our mouths up. They had to zip up the mouths of mainstream media. This couldn't be let out there in the public sphere. So the Mayors Migration Council is a coalition of mayors for mayors to accelerate ambitious global action on migration, creating a world of urban migrants. The World Economic Forum, Migration and its Impact on Cities. The Global Future Council on Migration comprises of global experts in cities and urbanization, including city mayors. So when going back to post the Christchurch attacks, Ardern covers her head, yet you have courageous Muslim women protesting against wearing the hijab. What a kick in the teeth for women then. I cannot imagine what it would be like to actually stand up against such a restrictive, evil regime that stops women from taking a hijab off their head. But Ardern, she kicks those women in the teeth, those brave women, and wears one after the Christchurch attacks. She calls it a mark of respect. Okay, so freedoms of voices for Muslim women. Another one under attack. Now, freedom of speech for women in New Zealand. Mainstream media chooses not to publicise an article. What is a woman? So I've got here the link to the World Economic Forum Migration Impact of Cities Report 2017. It's 172 pages long, but I will give you the link. So what they say is migration, its impact on cities in October 2017 refers to the 19th of September 2016. That was a New York Declaration of Refugees and Migrants, a commitment to develop the UN Global Compact of Migration of 2018. For society to embrace diversity, cities must identify as being the main legal priority to address, enable immigration, protection of migrants, legal and illegal, those not entitled to legal entitlements as refugees. The collaboration of the UN member nation governments and with stakeholders. This includes private and NGO sectors to overcoming existing future barriers as to the integration of migration. And the World Economic Forum's 172-page report on global action for migration to be enacted through urbanization, cities state they are collaborating with shaping future conversations with city leaders worldwide with the aim of maximizing large movements of refugees and migrants. So that's mass migration, and Auckland City is into that. In fact, New Zealand government is right into that. Hence, UN Global Compact of Migration that Peters promoted with Ardern and other political cronies in the cesspit of Wellington determined themselves to gag New Zealanders, stop them from speaking up, stop the mainstream media speaking up, stop independent media from speaking up. back in November 2018, I had the police with cameras in my face, a 10-line police stand up, ordering me to go home. 2018, and the confiscation of guns of farmers and gun clubs. All this happening. So the downward spiral of freedom of speech. Now we are significantly affected by this violation of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, which is our human rights. Internationally? Nationally? No. The government, the UN, the WEF, and all those that collude with them have given themselves the right to stop us from speaking up. And freedom of speech, hate speech, let's think about that. Isn't that in the eyes, the ears, and what the thoughts are of the receiver? They cannot put a definition on hate speech. So they say an incitement to hate speech. That's a thought crime. Wake up, New Zealand.